Today we're diving into a condition that goes way beyond just being nervous or a little uncomfortable. We're going to be talking about androphobia, what it means to have an intense, overwhelming fear of men.
We all have a natural sense of caution. It's built in, it's what keeps us safe. But what happens when that instinct just goes into overdrive? When it turns from a helpful guide into a fear that takes over everything? That's really the question we're digging into today. Where is that line between being careful and having an all-consuming phobia?
So to really get a handle on this, we've got to start with the basics. Let's define what we're actually talking about. What is androphobia?
Okay, so here's the clinical definition. Androphobia is an intense and irrational fear of men. And those two words, intense and irrational, they are so important here. This isn't just feeling shy. It's a really powerful phobia that can be set off just by someone being in the same room, or sometimes even just by the thought of having to interact with a man. And this is where that line we talked about becomes super clear. Normal caution, that's rational. It's a useful tool. But androphobia, that's a fear so strong it actually starts to disrupt, even dismantle, a person's daily life. The real test of a phobia isn't just the fear itself, it's the real-world, tangible impact it has on someone's ability to just live.
So the big question is, how does a fear like this even start? What are its roots? Let's take a look at some of the potential origins.
Well, the sources usually point to a few main causes. The first one is, as you might expect, deeply personal, a past traumatic or abusive experience. But a second cause is a little more subtle. It can be a learned fear, something that's absorbed over time from negative social or cultural messages. And then sometimes it's connected to other underlying anxiety disorders that just kind of pour gasoline on the fire.
Okay, so we've got the what and the why, but what does this anxiety actually feel like physically? Let's zoom in on the symptoms.
For a lot of people, the body's reaction is immediate. It can start with just uncontrollable shaking.
And that's often followed by sweating, as that whole fight or flight response just kicks into high gear.
And then a racing heartbeat, that classic sign of panic. And it's so important to remember these physical symptoms, they aren't just in someone's head. They are very, very real. And honestly, they can be terrifying to go through.
So when your body is going through all of that, what's the most natural response in the world? A powerful, overwhelming urge to avoid the thing that's causing it. It feels like self-preservation, but as we're about to see, that strategy, it comes with a really heavy price.
Right, because that constant state of avoidance, it's going to have some serious consequences. Let's look at how this fear can start to interfere with, well, pretty much every part of a person's life.
Yeah? The impact is huge. It can strain friendships and family relationships. It can get in the way of your career or your education. Even simple things like going to the grocery store can become a massive ordeal. What happens is the fear basically builds these invisible walls all around a person, and that can lead to some really profound isolation and emotional distress.
But, and this is the most important part, it is not a hopeless situation. Not at all. So this brings us to the best part of our explainer, the path toward actually managing this fear.
The really good news is that there are proven, effective ways to manage androphobia. The journey usually starts with therapy. Things like cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and gradual exposure therapy are really effective. They're designed to help rewire the brain's fear response. That's usually paired with learning practical coping skills, like relaxation techniques to manage anxiety in the moment. And in some more severe cases, medication can be a helpful tool to get the symptoms under control.
Look, if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this. This is not a life sentence. With the right support system and a solid treatment plan, people absolutely can learn to manage and even reduce this fear. There is a clear path forward.
So we'll leave you with this to think about. When we really take the time to understand a specific phobia like this, what causes it, what it feels like, and how it can be treated, how does that change the way we think about anxiety in general? And maybe more importantly, how can that knowledge help us be better at supporting the people in our own lives? It's definitely something worth